An absolutely electric first night of the Republican National Convention inside Fiserv Forum. You could feel the crowd's emotion as former President Donald Trump was introduced. There were a lot of tears, there were a lot of cheers, and there were chants of USA after Lee Greenwood performed God Bless the USA. President Trump made his way up to where his family and his new running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, were sitting to watch the final few speakers on night one. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the hairs on the back of my neck were fully standing up. And it appears as though we don't have, there it is, the USA chant rang out. From there, the crowd began chanting, "Fight, fight, fight." Of course, the famous chant that President Trump himself, with a raised fist pumping in the air, started to yell as soon as he was shot in the ear. The former president appearing with a large bandage over his right ear, which already the left is turning into something of a blue anon conspiracy theory. You see, the entire thing was staged. Trump wasn't actually hit by a bullet at all. Isn't it weird? They're already speculating that the former president hasn't had his doctor release what he was specifically treated for, and the entire thing, the fever swamps of the mainstream media and all of their allies who marched down to the Republican convention yesterday, have been propagated. We will all have that. We will have all of that coming up throughout the next 2 hours of broadcast excellence live from the Republican National Convention. We are in Media Row at the UWM Panther Arena, just about a block from Fiserv Forum. We have got a spectacular setup where Clay and Buck will again be broadcasting live right after we're done. Other iHeartMedia stations from all across the country. And folks, there are approximately 35,000 members of the media in attendance today. None got dunked on harder, though, than Jacob Soboroff of MSNBC in what probably was my second favorite moment of the convention. The first, of course, when former President Trump first appeared on the screen. Folks, I'm not entirely sure if that moment was fully captured. Being in the arena, you could just feel, and I know I keep saying you can feel the excitement, you can feel the excitement. It's one of those moments that on television, I'm sure it was incredible, but when you're experiencing it with 10,000 other people, all of whom, except those in the rafters on Media Row inside the Fiserv, were all feeling that level of emotion. It was pride, it was resolve, it was anger, it was sadness. You could see almost all of it on President Trump's face. He did look like there were tears in his eyes. And this was, as a number of listeners pointed out, a different side of Trump, a more human Donald Trump that I think has broad appeal. This was a human moment for everybody, that he's walking to many members of his family. He's walking out to his supporters just a couple of days after literally dodging a bullet and cheating death. That was an unparalleled moment. I just wish everyone in this audience could have been inside the arena when that happened, to just feel, along with all of the other Republicans, Trump supporters, conservatives, and, of course, Jacob Soboroff, who earlier in the day, while the delegates were being awarded to former President Trump from the state of Florida, it was a very cool moment there, as well as his sons, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, got to be the ones to say Florida awards its delegates to Donald Trump, putting him over the top. He becomes the official Republican Party nominee. Well, Soboroff, an MSNBC reporter, decided to use that moment. Remember, about 72 hours after Trump almost was assassinated, to attack the former president, to his son, about his divisiveness.
So that was not being tough enough on fact checking. Are you kidding? Well, and all the mainstream media, Biden was accusing all you guys in the media. You never point out the lies of Trump. Oh, really? That got us crazy.
Absolutely spectacular moment. And for the record, yes, there was a family separation policy. Yes, there were kids in cages during the Obama administration. This was actually one of the major lies told about the Trump administration, that this was in the summer of 2018, 2019, this new unprecedented policy that they were just ripping small children from the arms of their wailing parents and thrown into detention centers. Those detention centers, of course, built under the Obama administration. The famous photo from that summer of media freakouts. Remember AOC in the all-white pantsuit crying in front of a parking lot, performative outrage for the cameras and so forth. That famous photo of the kids in the cages was literally taken during the Obama administration. If you would like to join today's show, give us a call, shoot us a text. The AdventNews.com talk and text line is open, as it always is. 414-799-1130. You can reach us toll free, 1-800-838-9476. Email me directly, dod@iheartmedia.com. We are streaming live via the DanoCam at Dan O'Donnell Show on X, Facebook.com/Dan O'Donnell Show, and you can watch us on our YouTube channel. Warning, because of our remote setup here live at the convention, you are only going to hear the microphone audio. I don't want to get into the detailed technical description of why, but it is impossible for us to tap into the program audio, which we normally do. So you're not going to hear bumper music. You're not going to hear the sound bites that we have. What I would suggest, put the audio on your iHeartRadio app. And, of course, be sure to download the Dan O'Donnell Show podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to podcasts. We have got a great lineup of guests live from the RNC this morning. Wisconsin Congressman Derek van Orton is already here. We're going to talk to him at 9:35. We have got Congressman Tom Tiffany, congressional candidate Roger Roth. We hope to hear from a certain birthday boy himself, Wisconsin Republican Party Chairman Brian Schimming, who, of course, introduced Wisconsin's delegation and awarded Wisconsin's delegates' votes to Donald Trump yesterday. So a jam-packed show. Yesterday at the convention, one of the very best speeches, I believe, belonged to Senator Tim Scott. very, very powerful moment there last night. And you contrast that imagery of the American lion, Trump, the golden mane, the fist in the air, the blood on the face, all of it. The fake giant bandage with which the left was, of course, mocking him for yesterday. It was a fake bandage. You see, he didn't actually need the bandage while he was on the golf course on Sunday morning, but now he put it on for effect. The man was shot in the ear, although, of course, we've got the blue and on crowd that doesn't really believe that. But this election is sort of about that contrast between the American lion. And this is why I think so many Democrats are so convinced that on Saturday, when Trump cheated death, he also essentially won the 2024 presidential election, because that contrast of Trump defiant in the face of certain death, fighting, as he urged his supporters to do milliseconds after coming millimeters from being shot through the skull. Contrasting that with President Biden, who in an exclusive interview with NBC News' Lester Holt, again, did Biden things, referring to his Secret Service chief, who is most definitely a woman, as him. Notice how quickly Lester Holt comes in for the save. From him. I want you to listen to this again. Just the first part of this. Holt can tell. Oh, I've heard from him, Biden says. Holt immediately makes sure he says, her, sir, you mean her. You notice Holt jumped in. Biden was going on, but Holt recognized how bad this looks, that Biden clearly has no idea who his Secret Service director is. Perhaps his handlers haven't actually told him yet, and he jumps in. This, by the way, is sort of emblematic of the media's dynamic in covering Biden for the last 3.5 years. They're basically his bodyguards. They're the people who are stepping in to save him, not from would-be assassins, but from his own constant senility. Now, Holt did also ask the former president about his own tweet from just 5 days before the attempted assassination. July 8th, Biden tweets out, folks, it's time to put Trump in a bullseye, something he said to donors as well. Put Trump in a bullseye. Now, you and I both know what that means. As rational human beings, we know a political bullseye means, okay, it's time to stop talking about Biden's dementia, and it's time for Democrats to unite and to focus on Donald Trump. It's a general election. We have to put the idea that Biden is going to be replaced out of our minds, and we need to all train our rhetorical, not literal, rhetorical fire on the former president. However, I'm going to take you all the way back once again to 2011, when Sarah Palin put bullseyes on vulnerable members of Congress, including Gabrielle Giffords, who was then several months later shot, and Palin took all of the blame for the supposedly violent rhetoric. Biden, just 5 days before someone literally put Trump in a bullseye, urges his followers to put Trump in a bullseye. Turnabout, it would seem, is fair play. And of course, now all of the insane rhetoric, much more insane than that. Trump is a Russian agent. Trump is Hitler. Trump is Mussolini. Trump is going to end democracy. 2024, if Trump wins, is going to be the very last American election. All of this stuff falls squarely on the shoulders of Democrats when one of their people, and don't get me started, oh, he was a registered Republican, he was wearing the shirt of a gun club. The man wanted to kill Donald Trump. You don't kill somebody you support. You don't kill somebody you love. You kill somebody that you hate and that you believe is a threat to the republic. So Holt actually asked Biden about the bullseye rhetoric, and Biden's answer was, well, Biden-esque. Oops, that's the wrong soundbite. Excuse me. Here he is. That was a rambling way of saying, no, I apologize for nothing. Trump really is as terrible as our rhetoric makes him out to be. But here's the thing. If Trump really was Hitler, why were all of these exact same people wishing him well and saying, thank God, we narrowly averted a disaster, all of this? If he really was, I don't recall any German patriots who opposed the Nazis lamenting Operation Valkyrie's failure and saying, thank goodness Hitler is still alive. They all know, in other words, that Trump isn't Hitler. They all know that democracy really isn't at stake, that Trump is somehow some unique existential crisis, this threat that America's republic has never before seen. They all know that it's a lie. But they propagate this lie precisely because their followers buy into it. Precisely because this is why when all of the focus was on Joe Biden and his obvious senility, they tried to turn it around on Project 2025, a Heritage Foundation conservative think tank white paper, basically a policy paper that has nothing to do with either the Republican Party's platform or Trump's own platform, because again, they wanted to fearmonger about the end of democracy, the end of women's and gay rights, the end of civil rights for black and brown people, all of the usual stuff. They can't get away from that rhetoric. They physically can't, because it's the only argument that they've essentially been making for a decade. We're not going to engage Trump on actual policy. We're not going to engage Trump on trade, on foreign policy. We're not going to actually discuss the issues. We're just going to make Trump into some sort of unique, monstrous figure that needs to be opposed. Look, when Trump was first elected, what did they brand themselves as? The resistance, deliberately evoking the French resistance to you-know-who when he was able to take over the country. They were the resistance, the resistance. They were saying we are going to oppose Trump by any means necessary. In 2024, they say he cannot be allowed to retake the White House. He cannot be allowed to retake. But what does that mean if not for the exact, plain, direct meaning of that phrase? When we come back, we will discuss his running mate, Vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance. Big surprise announcement yesterday. That next on the Dan O'Donnell Show.
Whenever you're ready.
Live from the Republican National Convention in downtown Milwaukee, it is the Dan O'Donnell Show. We are so thrilled to welcome to the program one of my favorite congressmen, Derek van Orton of the great state of Wisconsin. How you doing, sir?
I'm pretty good, but, I'm the only congressman you know, so I'm not sure that was like a super compliment. But.
I mean, I know the entire Wisconsin delegation, and compared to Gwen Moore and Mark Pocan, you're my favorite.
Thank you.
So
that is a tremendous compliment.
I believe we call that damned by faint praise. So your thoughts about the program last night?
It was amazing. And if you can't see that the Republican Party is the big tent party, I don't know how I can help you. I was sitting next to a friend of mine. He happens to be a rabbi. I'm watching Amber Heard deliver an incredibly meaningful...
Or Amber Rose.
I'm sorry. Amber Rose delivered this incredibly meaningful, thoughtful speech about how Donald Trump is not a racist, how she did her homework because her father was a veteran and challenger. So I'm sitting there next to a rabbi watching Amber Rose deliver a speech at the RNC and seeing Mike Johnson applaud her.
Yeah.
And then followed immediately by the president of the Teamsters saying, you know what, it's all about getting together and doing things. So it was incredibly remarkable. It was almost a surreal experience.
And there were a lot of people, especially at the Teamsters president's speech, who said, look, he's saying things that don't belong at a Republican National Convention. I said, no, that's sort of the point. The point is that we can get together. We can get together and discuss ideas and have disagreements, but ultimately the working men and women, and this was the theme of last night, it was make America wealthy once again, and sprinkled in with the Glenn Youngkins and the Amber Roses and the Tim Scotts were regular, everyday people just telling their stories. Right. These weren't scripted speeches. There was a guy who was a grandpa who he sounded like he was just speaking from the heart.
And he said he couldn't go and buy his grandchildren these big gifts anymore because he can't afford it because Biden's economy is so bad. And Sarah Jane and I just had our 11th grandchild, and we feel this at a visceral level. Everybody does. Everybody, it's time to believe your lying eyes about the economy. And what the president of the Teamsters said last night without saying it directly is, I want my union men and women to vote their conscience.
Right. To vote, don't feel like because we've always been Democrats, you have to vote Democrat. Right. And that I thought was an incredibly powerful message because the theme, without saying it, is like, look, we may disagree on some issues. We may have preconceived ideas about who black people are supposed to vote for,
right?
About who Teamsters are supposed to vote for. But guess what? All of that is out the window because we are in a full-blown economic crisis in this country. And just 4 years ago, we were doing great. Before the COVID lockdowns, we had the most booming economy. We had full employment. Inflation was not even the 99th out of 100 concerns here in the United States. People were doing great. Okay, and then all of a sudden it came crashing down and never recovered because of Biden's inflation. I mean, I thought it was an incredibly powerful message, and that's sort of bolstered by the author of Hillbilly Elegy, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance being announced. I thought that was a masterstroke yesterday. Not just Vance, who I am a fan of. He wouldn't have been my top choice to be VP, but just that's political concerns.
Sure.
But when you saw that as the message, and Hillbilly Elegy, if you haven't read it, it's a wonderful book about his own upbringing in the forgotten region of America.
Let me tell you about that guy. He was raised in abject rural poverty. He left and he joined the military, got married, had kids, and now he's a member of the highest. He is a member of the highest ranking portion of the government of the most powerful country that has ever existed on the planet. I was raised in abject rural poverty in a broken home, joined the military. Now I'm a member of Congress also. That happened within a single generation. Okay, I've lived and worked on 5 continents, man, and this is the only country on the planet where you can go from the meanest circumstances ever to the highest levels of government in the best country that has ever existed. That is a direct expression. He is a walking expression of the American dream, and that should be celebrated. He is the antithesis of an elitist. You know what I mean? Me and him grew up. We are tradesmen. That's why I feel an affinity towards hardworking men and women. I don't care if you're a union or not. You're working and you're providing for your family. I'm with you, and I don't care if you got one of those other T-shirts on. Neither does he, and he's a perfect complement to President Trump. And I think that ticket is it's remarkable. And I'm just. Do you notice like an electricity when you walk into that?
That is the first thing I said when I went on the air at 9:06, is that you could just feel when he came out, when Trump came out. First of all, when J.D. Vance came out, and he was doing a lengthy interview with Sean Hannity over on Fox News,
right.
And there was a massive line outside of the Fox News studio inside the Fiserv just to catch a glimpse of him. Probably 200 people just lining the concourse of the Fiserv, and I happened upon it.
Yeah.
And as he walked out, the crowd just erupted. JD.
Right.
People just and when you feel that electricity, and you as a working man, as a veteran, as somebody who has served this country, when you feel that same affinity for J.D. Vance, you'd better believe that there are millions of other people do. In hindsight, it seems as though he was always the perfect complement to the Trump ticket.
It's amazing. So listen, here's why this convention is just going off the charts in the best way possible. Over the last few weeks, it's been the strangest portion of American political history, certainly my lifetime, maybe ever. So for the first time at that debate, tens, if not hundreds of millions of Americans saw Joe Biden for who he is for the first time ever.
Yes.
He is an elderly man in very steep cognitive decline, right? And I find no joy in saying that, but that's a fact. He cannot string together more than one sentence. He can't work. His own people said he's no good. He's only good between 10 a.m. and 4 in the afternoon, right? So they finally saw Joe Biden because the media couldn't filter that. And then last Saturday, President Trump literally got shot in the head. His first response was to stand up, raise his fist up with blood running down his face in defiance, and telling everybody to continue to fight for their freedom. That was not a call to violence or any of that junk some leftists are trying to say. He was telling us to fight for our freedom.
Yes.
First response after literally getting shot in the head. So people finally saw President Trump, the rest of the nation and the world, as we have known him to be forever. He is a leader. And the first thing you have to be as a leader is a uniter, because you have to be able to unite your team. I've united SEAL teams. I've united all these different groups around the world, including my little business that we had. And President Trump has been doing that forever, and the media could not censor that. And so us as Republicans were giddy because we're finally getting to tell the truth and our story that we've been saying for a very long period of time now. And that's liberating. That's why that arena is so electric, Dan.
That is an absolutely fantastic observation. I never heard it put exactly like that. Congressman Derek Van Orton, that's why you are my favorite member of Congress, brother. Much better than that Pocan guy. I don't think there's any sort of wisdom coming out of that Twitter troll.
Well, we're going to let that lie right there.
Exactly, sir. I'm sure I'll be catching you around the convention floor. You're going to be wandering around, 100%. Hanging out for tonight's programming.
Absolutely.
I absolutely cannot wait. Congressman Derek Van Orton, my guest here on the Dan O'Donnell Show, as we are live from the Republican National Convention. proof that you never know who you're going to see walking around the Republican National Convention. We did not plan for it, but because he was here, why not? We introduce now, live from the Media Center at the UWM Panther Arena, Eric Hovde. He is running for the United States Senate. Sir, welcome to the Dan O'Donnell Show.
Dan, it's great being on your show again, and I hope all your listeners are having a great start to your day.
Well, I'll tell you what, they are. They love it. But there is one thing I have been texted nonstop about, and that is I have not yet given the word in the Sizzlin' Summer Cash Contest. This, ladies and gentlemen, Eric, you have no idea. I am just the filler between chances to win $1,000. So I was hoping that you could help me out. The 9 o'clock word in the Sizzlin' Summer Cash Contest is...
Dan, I hate to tell you, but I don't have my reading glasses. I can't read the
You can't read the phone. All right. It is 3 letters. Okay, let's cover your right eye, Mr. Hovde, and I want you to take a look. Can you read the
word? Pay?
Pay. Hey, there we go. Yes. All right. The word is pay. P-A-Y. Pay. You have got until 55 past this hour to go to our website and enter the keyword pay. See, you've still got it, sir. Yeah, this is what yesterday's theme of the RNC is, the everyday American. I don't think it gets more everyday American than I can't see the text on my phone. Okay, I gotta ask, personal question, because I got the regular iPhone 15. You're a little bit older. You got to have the giant iPhone 15 Max.
It doesn't fit in my pocket.
Oh, it doesn't fit in my... See, that's why I never got... I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't want to give up and do like this super big...
Nor do I.
Text, but I'm like, I'm starting to get there where I'm like... All right, especially when I wake up and everything is just blurry. I'm like trying to scroll through Twitter to get the day's news and figure out what I'm going to talk about on the show. I'm like... I got to get my iPad because I can't see
Welcome to the aging process.
Trust me, sir. Trust me, sir. I am already there. Now, we do have to talk about an absolutely incredible, the word I keep hearing described, and I heard it described last night. I was at the Wisconsin delegation's party at the 3rd Street Market afterwards, and people just kept saying electric. It was an absolutely electric evening.
100%. It looked... You could just tell the positive energy that was radiating, and all the speakers and just everybody was so upbeat. You know, obviously what happened on Saturday and the fact that President Trump, was not seriously injured or killed. And by the way, heartbreaking for that father. So let's never forget there was a real tragedy that day. But, people were so excited about that. Obviously, the J.D. Vance announcement, the whole nomination process, the lineup of the speakers last night, I thought was brilliant, Dan. And I'll tell you why I thought it was. You started off with in that like 9 o'clock hour, the grandfather talking about, struggling to buy presents for his kids, his grandkids. You had that small entrepreneur talking about how hard it is now in his business. You had the black woman talking about how she did not like Donald Trump. She thought he was a racist, and then she started to study him and get to know him and all the rest, and said, I was wrong, and I'm voting for him. He's the farthest thing from it. The Hispanic woman kind of gave that same message, I voted for Joe Biden, and that was my mistake. I mean, just the messaging arc that came out was so good and so positive, and real Americans talking about their lives, how it was better under Donald Trump and worse under Joe Biden. So I thought that was great. But back to your point, it was electric, it was pumped up. People feel fantastic. We just got to keep this energy rolling all the way through election and take this country back and restore America.
And let's not forget also, in one of the busiest news days in recent memory, you also had a federal judge throwing out the classified documents case in which FBI agents actually raided Trump's house in Mar-a-Lago, searching for documents from a special counsel investigation that a judge has ruled was totally unconstitutional. unconstitutional to begin with. I mean, you have that happen. You have former President Trump recovering after an assassination attempt. You have J.D. Vance named as the nominee. And oh, by the way, the Republican National Convention opens up here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was an exhausting day, but it was a spectacular day. Senate candidate Eric Hovde joining me here on the Dan O'Donnell Show. The selection of Vance, especially named on that day where the focus was on everyday Americans coming up from poverty, struggling with making the American dream happen for them. Vance, of course, the author of Hillbilly Elegy. He was born into rural poverty, as our last guest, Derek van Orton, said, and wrote a just gripping, heartbreaking memoir about how life is in America for those forgotten Americans. I mean, you couldn't have scripted a better announcement for the VP, and I can see why he was Trump's perfect choice.
100%. And I forgot to mention, you had the head of the Teamsters Union that talks right to those union workers and talking about what's happened to America. Because let's face it, that is what happened to America over the last 30 years as we created bad tax policies that drove corporations out of this country to China, to Vietnam, to Mexico. And it's devastated a lot of those communities. Look at the fentanyl crisis and the addiction problem. This is so much of it was fueled by devastating those local communities, their economies, taking away important manufacturing jobs. So I think J.D. Vance, being a Midwesterner, having that life story, younger, we have the two oldest presidential candidates, being younger, can speak to younger people. And what I've heard is J.D. Vance is going to spend pretty much his time in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Well, isn't that interesting? It's all President Trump right now. It looks he has to win one of those three states because Georgia, Arizona's fallen back in line to where they traditionally are. So, look, I think things are moving really well. I think we still got 3.5 months. And I'm going to tell all your listeners, you've got to continue to pull those people in the middle over. You got to talk to them, the light Democrats. Do you really like these policies of Joe Biden, the opening our southern border, the inflation? We got to pull them in. And if we can keep this momentum, we're going to win big in November.
I think we are. Senate candidate Eric Hovde running against Tammy Baldwin. EricHovde.com, your website, HOVDE.com. That is where you can find out more or to donate to the Hovde campaign. Sir, always a pleasure, and best of luck reading your phone the rest of the day. You're listening to the Dan O'Donnell Show. We'll be right back after this. Dan O'Donnell Show live from the Republican National Convention right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Coming up after the top of the hour, we will talk to the Milwaukee County GOP chair, great friend of the show, Hilario Deon. We've also got congressional candidate Roger Roth, Congressman Tom Tiffany, and you never know who's walking around. I showed up this morning, and our good friends Armstrong and Getty of Sacramento and a statewide California network were interviewing Jim Jordan, the Ohio congressman. So it's always a lot of fun. It's sort of like guest roulette here at the RNC. It is time now to name today's unhinged liberal of the day. Today's unhinged liberal of the day is Omar Flores. He was the head of the March to the Republican Convention, the Coalition to March on the Convention, I believe they called themselves, a loose collection of leftists, BLM, Code Pink, the Palestinian people, all of them. They marched on the Republican National Convention yesterday and, well, didn't really disrupt anything. In fact, I was right by their protest march zone and could barely hear them. Well, before their march, Omar gave a press conference and was asked why he is refusing to condemn the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Yes, we cannot condemn the attempted assassination of a guy we don't like because it has nothing to do with us. Why are you even asking me that question? Omar Flores, your unhinged liberal of the day. His organization makes a big, surprising but not especially surprising announcement. We are going to get to that. All of the focus in the Milwaukee and statewide media about this group of crazies, all of the focus for weeks and weeks and weeks. How close are they going to get to the RNC? What are they going to be allowed to do? Will free speech be allowed to happen at the RNC with the protest zone? And their announcement is actually quite comical. Plus, I have some firsthand observations being in the middle of that protest march yesterday. We'll share that coming up next when the Dan O'Donnell Show live from the RNC continues. Conservative thought, not just talk. It is the Dan O'Donnell Show live from the Republican National Convention in downtown Milwaukee. We are so excited to be here after a positively electric first night of the RNC that saw something of a surprise appearance by former President Trump. The initial chatter was that he was actually going to speak very briefly in a big break from tradition. Typically, the nominee isn't heard from until the last night of the convention, but it was believed that President Trump wanted to address his supporters, let them know he was doing okay, rally the troops. It turned out his mere presence was enough, as the crowd absolutely exploded when he was shown his ear bandaged backstage, ready to walk out to Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA. Well, God bless you folks for sticking with me, even though it took me a full 45 minutes to give out last hour's sizzling summer cash contest word. We tried to get Eric Hovde to do it. We tried. He eventually was able to read my phone. Just a truly hilarious moment. We'll have that as one of our highlights of today's broadcast a little bit later on. The 10 o'clock word to win you $1,000 instantly is bank. B-A-N-K, bank. You have got until 55 past this hour to go to our website and enter the keyword bank to enter the contest for this hour. The word is bank. You have got a full 47 minutes to enter it. All right? Last time you had like 10, still plenty of time. Major concession by the left-wing coalition to march on the 2024 RNC. Omar Flores put together this ragtag group of protesters. Some were from Code Pink, some were from the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas crowd, some were from BLM, some were just people with nothing better to do. Actually, that was all of them. But they all got together at Red Arrow Park, and for weeks we were told in local and state media about how they just wanted to make their voices heard, and would they be allowed to get anywhere near the RNC? Would they be able to get within a block of the Fiserv Forum? Well, they did. They did. In a last-second agreement, I believe, reached on Friday with the city of Milwaukee and the Secret Service and everybody who is doing security here, the group was allowed to walk directly up to the hard security zone where only people with passes to get in, delegates, guests, media members, that sort of thing. And it was indeed within about a block of the Fiserv Forum. It was right east of the Deer District. And I happened to be outside. I was having lunch at one of the restaurants, Mecca Grill or something like that. I don't even remember where I was at. And I happened to walk out because I said, oh, okay, they're marching down right now, is sort of following some of the coverage of this. And I walked out onto the balcony. And folks, you could not even hear them. I could hear barely some of the pounding on the drums. I had to strain my ear in order to hear the dude on the bullhorn screaming. And a little bit before that, I happened to be outside of the secure zone. I went down to our friends at Annex Wealth Management, their office is at the Pfister Hotel, to record my weekly podcast with Dave Spano, The Difference, which, by the way, you can find on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to podcasts. So I was down at the Pfister for a little bit, and I took a Lime scooter. It's just way easier to get around down here. I don't know what your feelings... Producer Dave says there has to be photographic evidence of me in a suit on a scooter. Yes, I know how ridiculous it looked, but folks, between walking in the sweltering heat and scooting, it was really a no-brainer decision there. So I scooted down, and then I'm like, you know what? I think the protesters are gathering at Red Arrow. So I had time before I had to go back and do a hit on Newsmax TV yesterday with my good friend John Bachman, who I finally got to meet in person. John's down in Florida. I've been doing his show for at least 5 or 6 years. And, you know, I've talked to him. I've messaged him back and forth on social media, texting and whatnot, emails. I'd never met him in person, so we actually went out to lunch. Immediately after that. That's why I was at the Box Social or Mecca Grill or whatever it was. So I took my scooter Yes, it was quite the sight. Dan O'Donnell on a scooter inside the protesters' little march as they were gathering to march on the RNC. The first thing I noticed, outside of the smell of body odor, weed, and patchouli oil, was the fact that the coalition seemed kind of small. That, in fact, there really weren't nearly as many protesters, I think, that anyone, either in the coalition to march or their allies in the media, wanted. In fact, it was striking how few people there were, a couple hundred, if that. Today, they have announced that they're done. They are not going to, they did one march, but because their turnout was so small, of course they never said that, but this was clearly the reason. Because their coalition was so small, they're not going to be doing any more protesting of the RNC. The coalition to march on the RNC, the statement from Flores goes, is proud to announce that on July 15th, we led over 120 organizations on a family-friendly march within sight and sound of the Fiserv Forum. I can tell you that is not entirely true. These organizations helped us to mobilize 3,000 people in the streets. Also not true. Thousands of people agree we must fight the racist and reactionary Republican agenda. With the end of our march, our coalition is coming to a close, and we have no further plans to organize actions around the RNC. We are also not aware of other actions happening in Milwaukee this week. I don't think I've ever seen that. They gave up after one day at an RNC. Come on, folks. The Occupy Wall Street movement did better than this at the 2012 convention in protest of Mitt Romney. Where are you people? And what I can also tell you, that at about 5 o'clock in the evening, I was again outside the protest zone. I needed to go to an event that I had promised that I would make an appearance at, and I needed to catch an Uber. Well, the Uber pickup is, guess where? Red Arrow Park. Do you know how many protesters were out there? 2. One lady on a bullhorn who, as soon as I got in my Uber, I said, I am really regretting. My biggest regret of the entire weekend, I can tell you already what it is, was not filming this woman on the bullhorn, because she was doing like a sing-song, Trump's an insurrectionist. She wasn't chanting. She wasn't talking. She was kind of singing, Trump's a loser. And then she would scream into the bullhorn at the top of her lungs, Trump's an insurrectionist. It was, honest to God, hysterical. The only other person there was a woman holding up a sign that had about 15 different liberal messages. And for reasons known only to the good Lord above, some delegate from a state I didn't catch, I saw his delegate badge, decided to engage this woman. I'm like, don't talk to the crazy street people, sir. What's next? They're going to start shouting arguments to the Jesus Mobile guy? Actually, I'm kidding. Brother Ron's a Milwaukee institution. I haven't seen him either. Did the Secret Service get rid of the Jesus Mobile? Did they impound the Jesus Mobile for the RNC? But this is big news. It's hilarious. It also underscores just how overblown the media's coverage of the obsession with the protest of the RNC. We are so pleased to welcome to the Dan O'Donnell Show right now a man who knows a lot of these left-wingers because he deals with them far too often. He is the chairman of the Milwaukee County Republican Party, great friend of the Dan O'Donnell Show, Hilario Deon. Hilario, welcome to the show.
Dan, thank you for having me on the show. It's great to actually finally be on the show and be able, what a great time to be on the show, none other than the RNC here in Milwaukee.
Yeah, it is absolutely fantastic. So what did you think about the first night's program, and what did you think just overall about how Milwaukee has turned out for this convention?
It was a beautiful event yesterday. I mean, it just, as you said, it was electrifying, for many people, and especially with that moment when President Trump first came out. I was live streaming actually on our county party Facebook page, wiping back tears because Lee Greenwood just really, rang it home with God Bless the USA. And the amount of support and love of country and love for President Trump and the movement that he helped create. This is a movement of love, and too often times that gets overshadowed by the left and especially people in the media. They like to highlight all the false narratives that they like to push, and so I think yesterday we were really able to see how far this movement has come and how diverse it is, and what message really rings home, especially when it comes to the issue of the economy. Yesterday was about the, make America wealthy again. People are struggling right now with the economy being where it is today. People have to work more than 2 jobs just to put food on the table. People can't afford gas. Grocery prices are through the roof. Rent is up. Everything is so expensive now. And I think we were able to see that strongly highlighted through the speakers that were talking. And I thought another powerful moment was actually having the president of the Teamsters on the stage talking and really said, we may not agree on everything, but, we got to come together. And I think that shooting on Saturday really highlighted that, we as a nation, we are to the point where, some people feel that we're in a cold civil war. I truly believe that. But I think there's always opportunities for us to turn from the path and actually come together as a nation. And I think now is that time.
The forgotten American, getting non-traditional Republican voters into the field and voting for President Trump, I think the ultimate populist president, now with a populist running mate in J.D. Vance, was the theme of last night. Clearly, this has also been your mission since you were first elected as chairman of the Milwaukee County GOP to speak to Milwaukee's black community, Hispanic community, the working people who have traditionally been Democrats. Were you happy that was the first night's message here in Milwaukee? And do you think that really helps in your mission after this convention is over to go to those non-traditional voters and say, look, the Republican Party is the one that's working for you now?
100%. And actually, what we're going to do, because we're having a new website. I sent you over the link, and I know you really like the way that it was set up. And we'll have, the full footage of the RNC, each day, hopefully on the website after the convention is over, so that we can easily go back to it and link it to it and show people in the community. This is the message that's coming out of the Republican Party. And what we have to do is just get out there and talk to everyday people. Again, we don't have to agree on everything, but if we really work on trying to build those relationships and show them like, hey, we agree, that everything's expensive. We got to get that, get people working again. We got to make sure that we keep jobs here. We got to make sure that we get inflation in check, which it was under President Trump. Is at 1.4%, I think, at the end of his term. So I think that's an important message that is going to be strongly highlighted, not only through the county party, but I think on a national level. And we're just going to keep hammering home. In Milwaukee, it's the lose by less mentality. People don't like when I say that.
Yeah, but it's true. It's true.
Milwaukee is a Democrat city. We have to be honest with ourselves, and you have to learn that you're not going to win everyone. And if you can increase the voter percentage, even by a few points, we're going to win the state.
He is Hilario Deon, the chairman of the Milwaukee County Republican Party. Sir, thank you so much. Really do appreciate having you on the show. Dan O'Donnell Show right back in just a second, live from the RNC. It is the Dan O'Donnell Show live from the Republican National Convention. Day 2 of the RNC here in downtown Milwaukee. We are joined live at the UWM Panther Arena, which is serving as the media headquarters, by congressional candidate, former state Senator Roger Roth. Sir, great to see you. Thank you for stopping by.
Dan, it is great to see you. This place is hopping this morning.
Yeah, it certainly is. I saw Lee Greenwood walking around, Dean Cain, Superman himself. And we have just had a ton of Wisconsin-centric guests because, of course, this is all about Milwaukee. It's all about Wisconsin. It's all about Donald Trump, his new running mate, J.D. Vance, as well. But from our perspective as Wisconsin guys, it's just so great to see the eyes of the world on Wisconsin for something so positive.
Absolutely. This city has so much to offer. And the fact that we can contrast this week, this moment with the RNC, compared to what it was 4 years ago when the Democrats tried to do something like that here, it just, I think, shows the American people and people of Wisconsin that the Republican Party is the party that has the solutions, that has the ability, that has the message to move this country in the right direction.
What was your feeling when Trump walked out, when they first showed him on screen as he was backstage with his ear bandaged, getting ready to come out? Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA starts playing, and then Trump is introduced. What was that moment like for you?
Goosebumps. And I will tell you that, from that moment, take the last few days going into the weekend, it is clear to me, as I think is to many, that Trump is winning this election. And he's got this moment right now. He stood in the firing line for the American people. And I think they respect that, in contrast to someone like Joe Biden, who we never see, right? They're hiding them from us. I think this is one of those redemptive moments where Trump has the ability to expand the base of the Republican Party, the ability, and I think he's going to do this on Thursday night with a unifying message, to let all Americans know that there is a better way. And it was, if you look at his administration and what he had done pre-COVID, we had an economy that was humming. We had a military that was respected around the world. And we had a border that was largely fixed through his policies, largely fixed, illegal immigration down to a trickle. There is a better way. We have the message. Now we just have to go and walk this thing out, continue to knock on those doors, reach those voters, make those connections, and we will be victorious up and down this November.
What did you think about the pick of J.D. Vance?
Yeah, I thought it was a bold pick. I can't say I was surprised just because they had been telling us a few names for the last few weeks, but I thought immediately of Abraham Lincoln. Here was a guy who went and assembled a team of rivals. And if you look at J.D. Vance, he didn't always say the nicest things about Donald Trump.
And the left is currently going nuts with that. Oh my gosh, he said he tends to believe, what was it, E. Jean Carroll or whatever, and he said all this stuff in 2016. Well, most Republicans were skeptical of Donald Trump. This isn't an abnormal thing. In fact, Marco Rubio ran against him in 2016. He was probably the second place finisher in the Veep Stakes. Okay, so yeah, but go on. I'm sorry, I kind of interrupted you.
I think it shows, Abraham Lincoln showed magnanimity when he was able to go and pull someone. It also showed that he wasn't threatened. He wasn't threatened by rivals, and I think Trump's doing that too. It just shows how confident and how in control he is right now of this moment. I think it's a great pick because J.D. Vance, as you know, coming from Ohio, that's part of the Midwest, that's part of the Rust Belt. It will absolutely speak to middle-class, blue-collar workers who feel abandoned. And the Republican Party now is the party of the working man and woman. Yeah. And Trump doubled down with that and basically sent out flares to people all around the country like, if you are middle-class work, we are your party. You have a home here.
And basically last night's message was from Amber Rose, the influencer, former Kanye West girlfriend. I believe she got a baby with Wiz Khalifa, the rapper, saying, look, I thought Trump was a racist, and I actually looked into his background and realized that he's working hard for the American people. You had an Hispanic woman who said, I voted for Joe Biden in 2020. I'm not making that mistake again. again, it's all about going after the coalitions of voters that Democrats have basically been taken for granted, and also who have been universally let down and harmed greatly by Bidenomics.
Absolutely. And, you know, the secret to winning America, we're divided, right? You've got the Dem camp, Republican camp. We fight over the middle, fight over those independents. With what happened last week with his surviving that assassination attempt, I think it's pretty clear Republicans are motivated. Everyone is coming out on our side to vote in November. He's got this ability now to cross over and grab those independents. This is a transformative moment, I think, for our nation. That's why I'm so excited to be running, to be able to take my blue-collar home building experience, my military experience, deployments to the Middle East. You know, my wife and I, we have 5 little boys. We have to have those hard conversations that all hardworking families have to have right now vis-a-vis Joe Biden's disastrous inflation. We have the ability now, from Trump all the way through Congress, to get men and women out there who can work together to move this country in the right direction. It's why I'm running. It's why I'm so excited in Donald Trump and J.D. Vance here.
He is congressional candidate Roger Roth joining me on the Dan O'Donnell Show. Sir, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. Really do appreciate you stopping by. Thanks, and don't be a stranger up until Election Day, okay?
Appreciate it. Thank you much. Thanks.
You're listening to the Dan O'Donnell Show. It is the Dan O'Donnell Show live from the Republican National Convention here in downtown Milwaukee. We are pleased to be joined now by Congressman Tom Tiffany. Sir, it is great to see you again. Thanks for stopping by.
Dan, great to be in Milwaukee. Good to join you.
So I've been asking pretty much every guest we've had on today, and we have had on a ton, your thoughts when President Trump was first shown on screen behind the scenes getting ready to walk out last night.
Great moment in political history, and it's being made here in the last couple weeks. I actually believe, Dan, that I'm hoping this is going to be a turning point for America, that final week of June when we saw those significant decisions coming out from the Supreme Court, the complete meltdown by Joe Biden, where the American people finally saw a man who is very addled and is really not capable of being president of the United States. I'm hoping that this is a turning point, and of course what the events of Saturday night, and I just hope this is a turning point for America when we can turn back from this whole notion of socialism and New World Order and all the rest.
Yeah, this is a moment, I think, that we understand that the future of America quite literally is at stake, and that was drawn into sharp relief on Saturday when the course of American history came within a couple of millimeters of being altered forever. That this was quite literally the difference between a free election and not the end of democracy, but fundamentally altered democracy.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. If Donald Trump would have fell and not gotten up, who knows what would be happening in America at this point. And I really like President Trump's message over the last few weeks, and I go back to June 27th. He recognized that the American people saw Joe Biden for who he is, and that he should just let those words of Joe Biden speak to the American people. And then, of course, after what happened Saturday night, I think he is prepared to lead this country and show the American people that let's get away from the personalities and that whole discussion. Let's talk about policies. What's best for the American people? Because that's what the American people are asking right now, Dan. They're going, I know people in Wisconsin are, they're going, what about me?
Yeah.
What about me? Inflation, the border, and all the ills that have befallen America over the last 3.5 years as a result of these ruinous policies by the progressive Democrats. They're going, what about me? And President Trump's going to provide that answer.
And President Trump, in selecting J.D. Vance, this was a direct appeal to the forgotten men and women of America. In hindsight, it almost seems like the selection of Vance was a no-brainer, because this election is all about getting hard-working Americans of all backgrounds united around not Donald Trump, not the Republican Party, but around the principles, limited government, prosperity, freedom, the American dream that all of us support.
It's all about America first. And so oftentimes presidents look at this as, okay, how do we balance the ticket? You know, that's how the smart people look at it and all the rest. This wasn't a balancing the ticket. This is a reinforcement of the ticket.
Yeah.
And I think it really does go to Pennsylvania, Michigan, and right here in Wisconsin. I think it goes directly to those states that they want to make sure that they're reinforcing to the people of middle America, you can count on us.
Yeah, exactly. And Joe Biden, meanwhile, is only countering that argument by saying, well, Donald Trump is a fundamental threat to America, that the threat to America is the guy who very nearly died 2 days ago. And he said that essentially again in that interview with Lester Holt that aired yesterday, that Trump essentially brought this on himself. Hey, let's not forget about all the inflammatory stuff that Trump said. It's almost like he and his allies in the press and in the Democratic caucus in Congress, they can't help themselves, because the only argument that they have fundamentally been making against Trump for the last decade is that he's a danger, he's a threat, he's a would-be tyrant. And all of that, I think, was undone on Saturday.
Yeah, they can throw their talking points away at this point. It is the only thing they can say, but it's also I mean, you have to remember, Joe Biden is a man who is seriously diminished at this point. We all saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, many of us have known it, but the American public saw it on June 27th. He only knows his talking points at this point. And his talking point is that Donald Trump is a danger to America. But I sit on the Judiciary Committee, and last week we saw it again, and we see it week after week. Everyone on the other side of the Judiciary Committee, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Democracy is going to end. This is how you get to this point where a guy gets shot at. And by the way, it's the same thing that happened to Steve Scalise, for those people that don't remember, who got shot about 5 or 6 years ago practicing for the congressional baseball game when a Bernie Sanders supporter came and said, I want to shoot up Republicans.
Well, and how about just 2 years ago when a deranged leftist goes all the way from California, literally drives across the country, arms himself, and calls police saying, I'm about to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh, and he's arrested in Kavanaugh's neighborhood after the Supreme Court Dobbs v. Jackson women's health decision was released overturning Roe v. Wade. I mean, we now have armed leftists attacking the three branches of government: executive on Saturday, judicial 2 years ago, and legislative in 2017. I mean, how much more do we need to see before we understand that it's not about Republicans and saying, Joe Biden doesn't have his faculties? I mean, this is abundantly clear. Just listen to the man talk for 10 minutes at a stretch. Yesterday, there was an interview that was released, he did apparently over the weekend, in which he said Barack Obama named him vice president in 2020. That's not a mistake that you make because you misspeak. It's a mistake that you make because you're confused, right? This is not about Republicans saying, okay, well, Biden is wrong, Biden is an idiot, Bidenflation is, ruinous. This is about Democrats for literally 9 years now saying, if you don't vote for us, everything you love will end. What kind of message is that in a free republic?
What policy are they defending out there in regards to the problems with inflation? Are they defending the excessive government spending that they unleashed when they had full control in the previous session of the Congress? How are they defending the border being wide open? How are they defending the evacuation of Afghanistan that showed the world we were going to be weak on the foreign stage? How are they defending all those things? They're not. They all go back to the person, you just cannot trust Donald Trump. Threat to democracy. That's the only argument they have. That's why we have to counter this. We have to talk about how inflation was caused by this excessive spending, that we have to go to the border and say, why is fentanyl unleashed on America? Why do you see the human trafficking that's going on? Why in Clark County, Wisconsin, in central Wisconsin, do you see an illegal immigrant kill 2 young kids just in the last few weeks? It's because of that open border. And then, of course, you have the weakness on the world stage that is people just see every day. That is what we're going to be focused on. We can have a strong America, we can secure our border, and we can rein in inflation if we have the right policies in place. And those are the policies of Donald Trump.
And now he's got a running mate, J.D. Vance. I take it you like the pick as a rural Wisconsin guy yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a reinforcement pick in regards to America First. And I mean, J.D. Vance is a really smart guy, and served in the military. Went through the Ivy League universities, though that's kind of diminished, isn't it, Dan?
A little bit. When they can't say is a call for genocide hate speech. Yeah, it actually is.
Yeah. But he's a person of real accomplishment, and I think he's a good pick. He reinforces America First. He's going to go out and talk to these people, especially as a Midwestern boy who's growing up here, and be able to talk about how America has declined as a result of leaving middle America behind. And we can do things to bring middle America back.
Yes, we can. Congressman Tom Tiffany of the great state of Wisconsin, great friend of the Dan O'Donnell Show. Always appreciate you coming on the program, sir. It is conservative thought, not just talk. We are live from the convention, and we will be right back at it after this. Live from the Republican National Convention Media Row, I am Dan O'Donnell. Man, have we had a jam-packed show today. We had Congressman Tom Tiffany, Derek van Orton, congressional candidate Roger Roth. We had Senate candidate Eric Hovde. We had the chairman of the Milwaukee County Republican Party, Hilario Deon. We had audio sound bites. We had big news. What is the media going to cover now? This is a genuine question. What is the Milwaukee media going to cover now that the protesters, the coalition to march on the RNC, they've given up? They have raised the white flag. I mean, I'm sure the flag is not totally white. I'm sure it's soiled. These don't look like the cleanest of people in the world. And let me tell you, folks, it was an olfactory experience. Taking my little scooter through the march on the RNC. And when I say it smells like BO and weed and patchouli oil, I am not kidding you. That is not an exaggeration at all. This is a motley crew of people. By the way, I have been reading a lot of your texts, and a number of people actually do have video of the shrieking woman on the bullhorn. Folks, I am not exaggerating. There were 2 protesters out last night. Opening night of the RNC. They're within literal shouting distance. Delegates are walking past, and they have nothing. In fact, I'm hearing the coalition to march. The numbers that are given are 3,000 people. There were more media and police officers down there than protesters. There is no way there were 3,000 people. Now, admittedly, I left before the march really got started because I had to do a hit on Newsmax TV. By the way, I will be doing Bianca de la Garza's show, Newsline. Had a wonderful lunch with Bianca and great friend John Bachman, as well as Matthew Foldy, who does work for Newsmax and is sort of a conservative gadabout. He is a man about town, just a really cool guy. We had a great lunch yesterday and just we're kind of talking. It was great to see all these people. It really does feel like a conservative Republican family reunion, and it's such a fun time. I cannot express enough just how joyful the mood is here. Even in light of the events a couple of days ago, I don't think anybody has forgotten the gravity of what very nearly happened and what did happen. I mean, a man, we read his daughter's tribute to him, Corey Comparatori. Am I saying that right, producer Dave? I do apologize. I have been just so busy. I haven't watched literally any television coverage or anything like that. I've been working pretty much nonstop. I was dropped off here at about 6:30 yesterday morning. Guess what time my wife came back and picked me up last night? Producer Dave says he's guessing I haven't. I just kind of slept here under my desk. I was riding the scooter until the sun rose. No, I actually made it home. I think we were home by about 12:30. She came at about 11:45 last night to come pick me up. But the mood here has really been a celebratory one. And this was something that I think people were not apprehensive about, but a man did die. 2 people are in critical condition. The president, as I've really focused on, came within millimeters of certain death. If he didn't turn his head at the last second to take a look at Senator Ron Johnson's immigration chart, he would be dead. Now, I think I may have answered my own question, producer Dave. What's the media going to be focused on now that the coalition to march on the Washington, D.C. RNC is done? What was that, Dave? Yeah, the Ron Johnson speech. Ron Johnson apparently gave the wrong speech last night, and they're making it sound like he actually gave AOC's speech. Like, he gave an older version of a speech. Everybody has obviously changed and updated their speeches in light of what happened. Okay, everybody, it seems, is making reference because it's impossible to ignore. Donald Trump was nearly assassinated 3 days ago, right? So Johnson, in a very brief, I think it was 3-4 minute speech, they loaded the wrong one into the teleprompter. So, of course, Dan Bice, who just can't help himself, this is like catnip to Dan Bice, reports on it. And I said, I opened up jsonline.com this morning, early like 5 a.m. when I started getting ready for today's show. And I said to myself, Dan O'Donnell, not Dan Bice, I guarantee you the Ron Johnson speech story is going to be in one of their top 4 stories on the website. Sure enough, Ron Johnson's speech snafu. So now what the coverage is going to be invariably is going to be, oh, well, the local businesses just aren't getting the business that they thought they were. Do you folks have any idea what the security perimeter looks like down here? It is physically impossible to get to a lot of businesses. If they thought that there was going to, oh my gosh, all these Republicans are going to be walking around, it's a secure perimeter. It's not like, well, the Republicans are just cheapskates. They don't want to spend money at local establishments. You physically can't, okay? It is physically impossible to get to. I saw the buffoon who runs the, the Pabst in the Riverside Theater, saying, nobody booked my theater. Yeah, what do you think? In fact, Matthew Foldy actually was kind of laughing about that. He said, what does the theater guy think? That they're going to put on a production of the play that was running when Lincoln was shot? What was it, Our American Cousin? Like, what the hell? Are they going to run the Julius Caesar production of Shakespeare in the Park in New York a couple of years ago with Trump as Shakespeare or Trump as Caesar getting assassinated? No, nobody's doing a play. There are vendors here inside the secure zone. There are obviously tons of parties, tons of venues have been booked up. A lot of local catering. There is a ton of business that is being done. In fact, I talked to a couple of Uber drivers yesterday who said they've been working pretty much nonstop. It's been a pretty sweet gig down here. But yeah, look for that to be the focus of the coverage. Anything other than the message. Just very quickly, my own thoughts about the selection of J.D. Vance. Not my perfect candidate. I do like him a great deal. Please don't get me wrong. I do like him a great deal. I actually thought Rubio would be the better pick because the open plea, the open invitation is for the Hispanic community, which has been trending significantly more Republican in the last couple of years, to finally just abandon the Democratic Party. And if you have someone, a Cuban, who can make that argument, and also Rubio would have been able to say, look, Trump called me Little Marco. I obviously had my own reservations about him, but I got over it for the good of this country. In hindsight, though, the selection of Vance was a no-brainer because he lived what Americans are going through right now. He lived the abject poverty in a forgotten America. Just read Hillbilly Elegy. I know a lot of you have. Probably going to be the #1 book on Amazon within the next couple of days. But he is able to solidify that message that it doesn't matter where you come from. Economic downturns like the one that America, whether or not you want to believe it, is in right now with its affordability crisis, it affects everybody. We are out of time for today's edition of the Dan O'Donnell Show. I will be here all day, all night. Check out my social media. Otherwise, we'll talk to you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, right here on the Dan O'Donnell Show.